الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. This is lesson number 8 of our commentary on the advice of Imam Zarruq Al-Nasiha Al-Kafiyah لمن خصه الله بالعافية, and today is lesson number 8 of this commentary. So we've reached to we're still in things that are forbidden, the things that have to do with the tongue, the forbidden things that have to do with the tongue. So these forbidden things that have to do with the tongue, he spoke about, he says here, وَفَرَائِضُ اللِّسَانِ الْمُجَرَّدَةُ عَنِ الْأَفْعَالِ خَمْسٍ, and the obligatory or the obligatory things that have to do with the tongue and that are not actions are 5 things. So the first one is to witness, the 2 witnesses. There is no La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, there is no God except Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. And praying on our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, at least once in your life, in your whole life, you say Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, at least. And saying the truth and judging in a fair way, to judge fairly, and asking people, ordering people to do good things and preventing them from doing bad things. And you have to keep in your mind the attribute, the conditions, the preconditions of this act, and we might mention that. The conditions are to have knowledge in what you're doing, and that the thing that you're asking people to not do is not supposed to be something that there are several opinions about it, and you're not allowed to force people to do your opinion where there are other opinions, these kinds. And you have to follow the right stages, so you're not allowed to start by the hand, and you can just ask people to stop doing things by your tongue. And if you are going to use your hand or you use violence, you have to have authority with you. If you don't have authority, that would lead you to make problems with the governments, with the authorities, or stuff like that. And scholars spoke about that. Actually, Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah in his Ihya Ulumuddin has a full chapter that he spoke about Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy al-Munkar. So he says you're not allowed to do it just like you're throwing something without watching. You take an arrow, just throw it, and you don't care where does it go. And many people do this nowadays. You find some young men that are active, that are they have this zaylat about Islam and stuff like that. So they say, "Wow, this is something that is against Islam. We have to go and change it." And they don't put in their minds, they don't consider that what can happen if they do that. So this is very important. You're not allowed to do something which, if you do it, it'll lead to something worse than you wanted to change. You're not allowed to do that. That would be haram. So, yeah, we can speak about that inshallah later. He says, like many people do nowadays, in his days, and it happened in our days. I mean, there are some brothers that wanted to change things that from to change a situation, and then it led to something that was worse than what they wanted to change. It led them to disasters, and that happens a lot in several places in the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to نسأل الله العافية والسلامة بمنه وكرمه. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us apart from these things that are bad. It says, I would give you a way to provide uh, to conserve your tongue, to conserve your tongue from using it in bad things. The first thing is to always use it in praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second thing, to be far from people. Don't be always with people. Don't get mixed with people a lot, unless there's something that you can do and that is good, or else you'll speak a lot, and speaking a lot would lead you to do bad things or to make mistakes. And when we're speaking about meeting people, it has to do with even chatting. Chat with these guys and chat with these guys and be in this group and speak in this group. Be far from people. That would be better for you. And that would rescue you from a lot of bad things. And eating only the food that you need. Don't eat a lot, because when you eat a lot, you feel that you want to speak, you want to be with other people, and all of your desires start demanding. You demand. When you eat a lot, you like to drink a lot, you would like to sleep a lot, you would like to practice sex a lot, and things like that. You see? It says the one that counts what he speaks, the one that counts what he speaks, he wouldn't speak a lot, because to count a lot of things, it's something that is not easy. So better for you to know what you're saying. So you won't speak unless something that would help you. And some of our salaf, our ancestors, they used to put a stone in their mouth so that they won't speak. Somebody wants to speak with you, say, oh, I can't speak, there's something in my mouth. And some of them used to write what he says. So he goes back home, he says, I said so and so, I said so, and he writes everything. You can't do that unless you spoke very few words. This is referred to Al-Rabi' ibn Khuthaym. He was one of the students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in Kufa. He was a very, very strict tabi'i that used to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are a lot of stories about Rabi' ibn Khuthaym, rahimahullah. Al-Nasiha rahimahullah narrated that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu once saw Umar. He entered and he found Umar. And Umar was taking his tongue. He was stretching his tongue. So he said, what are you doing? He said, this is the thing that put me in a lot of problems. Actually, Imam Malik narrated this story, but it was vice versa. That means Umar is the one that entered and he found Abu Bakr stretching his tongue, pulling his tongue. And he's told him, what are you doing? He said, this is the one that put me in a lot of problems. Which problems, O Amir al-Mu'mineen? Which problems, O Khalifatu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's only because they were very sensitive and they feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they used to be very, very strict in judging themselves and in controlling their alms and their tongue and their actions. The Prophet ﷺ said, is it only what you use your tongue that makes you fall on your face in hellfire? And he used the word hasa'id wa al-sinatihim. Al-hasad means harvest. When you go and you have a lot of plants and things that you planted, so you harve it. If I didn't make a mistake in this word, that means you cut it and you use it. So it's like when you cut all of what you did. So all of what you planted. So the tongue is something that you cut with it. You use it all the day. So if you cut good things, it'll be beneficial for you. But when you cut something that is bad, it'll lead you to fall in hellfire. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." To be a good Muslim is to be far from things that doesn't concern you. Things that don't concern you, be far from them. Why should you speak or participate in something that doesn't concern you at all? Some of our Salaf radiallahu anhum said, if speaking was from silver, being silent would be from gold. And there is a hadith here that the Prophet ﷺ says that to rescue yourself is to keep on silence. Najatu fi samt. That means if you want to be aware and far from all kinds of problems, keep silence. And this hadith is narrated by Tirmidhi, and it's a good hadith. It's a sound hadith. Some scholars said that when speaking or keeping silent is balanced as the same, the same thing if you speak or you don't speak, so keep silent is better. To keep silent is better. One of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum was killed as a martyr in a battle with the Prophet ﷺ. So Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas said, "Oh, so good for this guy. So good for this guy being in paradise." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Who told you that? Maybe once he had to pay some payments and he didn't do that. Or sometimes he spoke in things that don't concern him." So this is a sound hadith narrated by Tirmidhi. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't like him praising somebody and saying that he is in paradise. We don't know. We can say, we ask Allah to put him in paradise. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him to have a good ending. But we don't know what did he do in his whole life. So you're not allowed to praise people and be sure, speak without hesitating that he is in paradise. We don't have any doubt that he's in paradise. You're not allowed to say that. But you say, well, we ask Allah to put him in paradise. We believe that he did good things to be in paradise, and God knows best, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then in the end he says here, anyone who wants to rescue himself from all types of mistakes of the tongue, so let him read a lot this verse. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. The last chapter of the Quran. And read إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ, and other verses that scholars that take care of these types of things spoke about by using the strong names of Allah and things that have to do with that. But actually I don't agree with the commentator about these things. Where did he get this from? I don't know actually. Where did he get this from? He says that anyone who wants to do this, he says that anyone who recites, the commentator says, with anyone who recites the name of Allah Al-Basir, 100 times before going to Jum'ah prayer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would open his vision to things. He would have good vision, not in a figurative meaning. That means he will see things in a good way. He will think in a good way. He won't have bad ideas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help him say and do good things. But there's no evidence that proves this. I don't know where did he get this from. And this is so strange from Imam Zarruq rahimahullah, that was so strict in following the Sunnah. And he used to say that anything that is against the Sunnah is considered as an innovation, the same as the opinion of Imam Shatibi in Al-I'tisam and others. And he refers a lot of things to Imam Shatibi rahimahullah. He was influenced by the book of Imam Shatibi Al-I'tisam rahimahullah. So actually I was so surprised to see things like this in his book. Allah A'lam. Allah A'lam. Maybe he trusts some of his shuyukh that said that, and he said, so he followed them in these things. And this happens actually. This happens. طيب. The second branch, الغصن الثاني المحارم السمعية. Things that are forbidden by the ears, with listening to things that are forbidden. Things that are forbidden are to listen to are different from things that are forbidden to speak. So everything that you are not allowed to just say it, and that are rubbish to say it, you're not allowed to listen to it. He said here, he mentioned a hadith here where the Prophet ﷺ says that the one that listens to somebody, he is his partner in what he's saying. This hadith is not authentic. The hadith is not authentic. I don't know where did he get it from. But the authentic hadith, is it's not. There are some narrations by some of the Salaf that have this meaning, but to the Prophet ﷺ, it's not. There's another weak hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that anyone who listens to a backbiting, he is a partner of that one who backbited. But this is actually true, because if you don't prevent him from speaking, and you don't tell him you're not allowed to say what you're saying, and you show him that you're pleased, or even you share with him what he's saying, then in that case you are one of the ones who is doing the same thing, the same mistake that he's doing. So the Prophet ﷺ says here in another hadith that is in Bukhari, anyone who listens to people without their permission, that means he listens to what they're saying, and they don't want him to listen to what they're saying. A very hot thing would be put in his ear in the judgment day. صُبَّ مَنْ اسْتَسَمَّعَ حَدِيثَ قَوْمٍ مِنْ غَيْرِ إِذْنِهِمْ, without their permission. صُبَّ فِي أُذُنِهِ الْآنُكْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and give glad tidings to my servants that listen to good things and they follow the best amongst it. فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. And he says, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ. That means forgive people and take the best thing, or order people to do the best thing, or to do the good things. And he mentioned his servants that are sincere. He says, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And when the ignorant people speak to them, they just say something that makes them far from what they're saying. وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. And then when they pass by some people who are doing bad or false things or saying false things, they they don't participate with them in what they're doing. And there are several verses that speak about the same meaning. And then he mentioned some verses from a poem that has the same meaning. تحرى من الطرق أوساطها وعد عن الجانب المشتبه وسمعك صن عن سماع القبيح كصون اللسان عن النطق به فإنك عن سماع القبيح شريك لقائله فانتبه. The same meanings that we just mentioned right now. The third branch, الغصن الثالث المحارم النظرية, things that are forbidden to see. And things that are forbidden to see are a lot. There are lots of things that you are not allowed to see. So you're not allowed to watch. You're not allowed to watch at a woman or a beautiful child. Not child, we can say teenager with pleasure, sexual pleasure. Okay, why did he mention a handsome young man? Because there were people who used to desire the same sex. Okay, wait a second here. This is now something important to speak about. Now, the Westerns speak about that the homosexual people are people that we're not allowed to say they are sick or they're not normal, because this is nature. Some people desire the same sex, some people desire the other sex. This is what they say, right? Now, in Islam, we agree that there are some people that feel pleasure when they see the same sex, but they don't care about the other sex. So in this case, are they allowed to follow their desires? No. They're not allowed to follow their desires, and this is considered as a trail. This is an examination for them. Do they follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them to follow, or they follow their desires? So the same, you're not allowed to approach a woman as long as you don't have any contracts with her as, marriage. You're not married to each other. You're not allowed to say, I desire her, so I just go and intercourse her. We're not animals, we're human beings. And we have a rule to follow. And this rule is the Sharia. Now, is there a way to approach the same sex? No, of course, there's no way to approach the same sex. That's forbidden. That's a horrible thing to do. And the punishment in the Sharia is very harsh. Not even in the Muhammadi Sharia. It's even in the Mosaic Law. The Mosaic Law was so strict about these things. And only few years ago, the Europeans and the Westerns used to consider this as a very horrible thing to practice. And they had harsh punishments for that. But secularism made people far from religion. You know, even the Westerns, when they used to follow the Bible, they were at least following something that was a divine law, or even though that it was corrupted. But a divine law that is corrupted in some things, it's better than following your desires. Because desires means that you are loose. You don't have any law. Now the Westerns nowadays, although they claim that they have a law, and that they follow their laws, and they respect the laws, but actually these aren't laws. Why? Because they keep on updating the laws according to what they desire. Nowadays, they claim that homosexuality is something that is a right. So you have the right to desire any sex you want, and you are allowed to marry the same sex or marry another sex. Or even don't marry anything, just fornicate. But they still forbid in the West to marry your sister or your brother, or a brother marries his brother, disaster, or a sister marries her sister, or marry your mother. They find that it's wrong and you're not allowed to do that. But who says that they're going to stop there? And who knows? After a few years, you're going to hear people that say, well, it's my right to marry my mom, my right to marry my sister, my right to marry my brother. When you go far from God Almighty, you become worse than animals. You become worse than an animal. And you become somebody that is down. You go back to the mud. But when you purify yourself and you follow the divine law, you become close to angels. We human beings are a connection between two things. We are a connection between the soul, which is something from the heavens, and the body, which is something from the dust and mud, because we are created from mud. So when you give your body all of its desires, you become a muddy person, a dusty person. You become son of sand, and you become low. But when you strengthen your soul, you become a divine person, if I am right to say, or an angelic person, and that makes you high. This is what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says. There are two hearts that fly over the throne, or around the throne of God Almighty, and others that fly or keep near the bathrooms. القلب قلبان قلب يحوم حول العرش وقلب في الحش. الحش are the bathrooms. Doesn't have anything to think about except private parts. That's what he always thinks about. So he's a nasty person that keeps on stuck to bathrooms, where the other one is a very high person that goes round the throne of God Almighty. Now, in every era, we have people, and then let me just tell you something that I used to say many times, but sometimes people won't understand this, but I'm just going to say it. In the medieval ages, Islamic ages, Muslims went strict in some societies according to the situation of females, of women. They hid the women's, and they made a big separation between male and female. So this led to a very big separation between the two sexes. So it led to desiring the same sex. And this happens in any environment that is closed, like in prisons, like in the army and stuff like that, where they don't see the other sex. So that leads, and it happened to the monks and nuns in the churches. And this actually was a mistake. This was a mistake. And this is not the situation that used to happen in the days of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and in the people who were after them. But it happened later on in the medieval ages, in the Islamic ages. That's why we don't have anything that has to do with sexuality, homosexuality, in the days of the Prophet ﷺ. It never happened at all. And never, Arabs didn't have this problem at all, because they were an open, a conservative, open environment. That means women are conservative, they wear conservative clothes, but they meet men in the masjid. You remember, in the masjid there is no separation in the Prophet ﷺ's days between men and women. Women keep in the back and men in the front, and that's it. They don't have any separation. And some of the women cover their face, others don't cover their faces. It wasn't women weren't forced to cover their faces. And we know that the majority of scholars say that the woman is not obliged to cover her face. But it's permissible for her to do that. Or preferable in some situations if she was so beautiful. If she was, she was afraid about herself. But it's not something that is permissible for her to do that. I'm sorry, it's not something that is obligatory for her to do that. Okay? So, therefore, what happened later on, the separation, the strict separation that happened, was actually a mistake. And it led to desiring the same sex. This is what I always say, and that was a mistake. Okay, Sheikh, what do you mean by that? That means we have to mix with each other? No, we have to do what Islam asks us to do. Be normal, act normal. You're not allowed to be by yourself with a female, and she's not allowed to be by herself with you. You're not allowed to have relationships speaking just speaking for pleasure with a female, and she speaks with pleasure with a male, because that would lead to a mistake. But to have normal relationships in work or in any place, that's not haram. That's not haram. And to be always conservative when she meets a man with her hijab, with a full hijab, that's not wrong. And this is what I meant. So here, that's why you keep on finding these things here. So he says, and the things that are forbidden. So actually, if you feel pleasure when you watch a handsome teenager or a handsome boy, therefore you're not allowed to see him by pleasure. The same thing to a woman. You are allowed to speak with a woman when she is doing her hijab, but if you feel that if you look at her face, that would lead you to fitna, and that would lead you to something that is wrong, don't look at her face. That's it. But when you're speaking to her normally, without any back intention, therefore, without any false intention, therefore, that is not forbidden. Yes. He says, watching at somebody's book without his permission. You're not allowed to look at somebody's book. He might put something in it. He might have a secret in it. He might write something that he doesn't want any. And the same thing in his phone, in his mobile. You're not allowed to look at somebody's mobile and it's not yours. Maybe he has a secret there. Maybe he has something that is private, a picture that is private. You're not allowed to do that at all. And from that, if you enter somebody's house, you are not, anything that is hidden, you're not allowed to uncover it, because it was hidden so that you won't look at it. So don't go and look at something that you don't have the permission to look at it. The same thing, you're not allowed, if you are allowed to enter somebody's house, just look at the place that you are in. Don't keep on looking there and there. And if you hear any voice, don't go looking at it, because it might be his wife passing, his daughter, whatever. If there's a picture, don't go looking at that picture unless he gives you the permission to do that, because it might be a private picture that you're not allowed to look at it. So be aware about these things. And the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praised our beloved Prophet when he went to the heavens in the day of the Isra wal-Mi'raj, when he went up in the heavens. He said, مَا زَاغَ الْبَصَرُ وَمَا طَغَى. That means the Prophet ﷺ sight wasn't lost. And imagine he was in the heavens seeing all strange things. And even though he was very polite looking at the place that he had to look at. وَمَا طَغَى, that means he didn't transgress looking at everything that he can see. And you're not allowed to see private parts that are not allowed to be uncovered. Like what? Like if somebody's laps, somebody enters with his laps uncovered, you're not allowed to look at it. Tell him, brother, you're not allowed to to uncover your laps. That's awra. More than that, if a woman enters without wearing her hijab and uncovering a lot of parts that she's not allowed to cover, you're not allowed to see that. You have to. Allah musta'an. It's very difficult nowadays in these places. Not even in the West, even in our countries. He says here, a man looking at his private parts without any need for that. And there are two opinions that Ibn al-Qattan al-Fasi rahimahullah mentioned. He has a big book. Ibn al-Qattan al-Fasi was a great Moroccan scholar in the 7th Hijri century. He was a muhaddith, faqih, a judge, and he wrote a huge book, one volume, speaking about all things that concern looking and watching. So it says there that some scholars say it is forbidden to look at your private parts, or it's unpreferable. There are two opinions about that. Then he says here that it is said that anyone who does that, he would be, and that would lead him to fornicate or commit homosexuality or something like that. وَقَدْ جُرِّبْ, and that was tried, and we found that it's true. But there's nothing that proves that, actually. Looking at your private part, if it's by desiring and playing, you're not allowed to do that. But if you did that because of you have to do something, or you're doing, so anybody who just looks at his private part, actually he won't do that in a normal way. Why should somebody just go and watch his private parts? It's not a normal thing. That's why the most accepted opinion to say it's unpreferable, unless you have to do, you need it for something. Okay, looking at nasty people like these governors that are not fair, and these nasty guys, and looking at them in a way that respects them and that shows that you are pleased to see them and that you are praising them. But if you look at them because you humiliate them, you detest them, you hate them, that's fair. You're not allowed to do that. Looking at your Muslim brother in a humiliating sight, you're not allowed to humiliate your brother. Who says that you are better than him? Maybe he's better than you. So never look at your brother in a way that shows that you are humiliating him. Looking at anybody that is not arrogance, that is not unfair, that is not somebody who is bad by part of your eyes, that it's a way to humiliate somebody. You're like looking at him by a part of your eye. Looking at poor people and needies in a humiliated way, that means you're just mocking them, and all kinds of things that are this. That means when you look at somebody and you tell somebody with your other eye, you close one of your eyes to show them that, look at this stupid guy or something like that. You're not allowed to do that. Anything that is haram to see or to write, you're not allowed to look at it. Unless النظر فيما لا يحل كتبه ولا تعلمه لقصد ذلك. Like sorcery and things that are all these bad things, you're not allowed to look at it and to learn it, and because you are not going to need it. Oh, there are several opinions about that. Some scholars say you're allowed to look at things, to learn it, and to avoid it. Some scholars say you're allowed to do that. He says here, you're not allowed to see your spouse's private parts. It is unpreferable to see your spouse's private part. The man to see his wife's private parts, and the wife to see her husband's private parts. It's unpreferable, not forbidden, because that affects your vision, and that makes you unshined anymore. And maybe you can see something that you wouldn't like, so you would hate your spouse. He says that Aisha radiallahu anha says, I never saw anything from the Prophet ﷺ, and he never saw my private parts. And we used to wash with each other from one pat, and our hands keep on playing in that pat. But actually what he says here is not true. This hadith is connected with two hadith. one of them that I never saw from him and he never saw from me, that's weak. It's not an authentic hadith. And the other hadith that we used to wash with each other in one bathroom from one pat, it's an authentic hadith in Sahih Bukhari, and it shows that the Prophet ﷺ used to that it is permissible to be naked with your wife there, because there is no private parts between the spouses, and even your intercourse each other. So why should that be unpreferable or haram or whatever? And scholars say more than that, actually. I don't want to mention something right now, but they say that you are allowed to approach those private parts and do whatever you want. This is permissible sex that you are allowed to have pleasure in. And this is the thing that you are, everything between you and your wife is permissible, unless two things. Unless approaching her from her bottom, that's something similar to homosexuality. The second thing is to approach her vagina when she is in her period. These are two things that are forbidden. More than that, it's your game. You can play with her whatever you want, and you are her game. She can play with you as she wants. This is what I can say about this. So, Sufyan Thawri was asked about looking at the doors of the people of the high class people, and its beautiful houses and stuff like that. He said, well, they didn't do that unless they want you to watch that. So there's nothing that prevents you from watching that. But scholars say it's better to avoid watching these things so that you won't desire those things. Some of the Salaf said that the homosexual people, the sodomized people, are three types. Some approach the same sex. Some keep on watching by pleasure. Some keep on approaching by their hands and stuff like that. And all of them are in a wrong way, because you are not allowed to have pleasure with the other sex without being married to each other, and the same sex you are not allowed to have pleasure, sexual pleasure at all. And then he mentioned here some narrations that say you're not allowed to look at somebody's book without his permission. And okay, and he spoke about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your eyes. So sometimes somebody looks at something without letting people feel that he's looking at a beautiful woman, or she's looking at a beautiful man, or a handsome man, or whatever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believers to lower their gazes. And that's an order, and it is a threat. It's threatening. He says you're not allowed to be alone with a foreigner female. That means she's not your sister, she's not your mother, she's not your aunt, she's not from your from the women that you're not allowed to marry. Because women are the tracks of the Satan, that that Satan tracks you there. He mentioned the same thing in the handsome teenagers or boys. For the people who desire that, he says, for the people who desire that, according to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. So he says that the arrow or the bow of the Satan that hits the heart of mankind are the women. Women. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the women to wear hijab, to be conservative, and to not appear by their voices, by them. Now, for example, the women aren't allowed to call for adhan, and they are asked in prayer if there is a mistake that just to clap their hands, and they are asked to be far from men in the prayer, and that's why the last rows of the women are best from the closest ones to the men, and the last rows of men are the worst because they are the most closest to the woman. So, uh, the more you are far from females, foreign females, that would be better for you. And then the more that you keep far from them and they keep far from you, that is better for you, unless they are your. Now, there are some cases that you're allowed to approach women, like like the doctors. You take your wife to the doctor, so he is allowed to see from her body what she needs to be she needs to be cured from, or when there are the judge asks to see her face to know who she is, and to see to know her, or the policeman or whatever they need to know. As long as there isn't any other woman to see her, so they need to know, is this so and so or she's not so and so. So you are allowed to uncover her face so that he can see her. And any other thing after that, it goes back to the law that says إذا ضاق الأمر اتسع. When things get squeezed, it gets open. So when it is obligatory to do something, therefore you are allowed to see that. You are allowed to see the woman that you want to marry, so you can go and see her before you get married to her. And there's a lot of things that we can speak about. Ibn al-Qattan al-Fasi mentioned in his book that I just mentioned to you. The fourth branch is the things that have to do with your private parts. With your private parts, that means your vagina, your penis, and her vagina, exactly. And one of it has to do is homosexuality. This is the most worst thing that can happen. It's sodomized acts to approach the same sex. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that He destroyed the Sodom and Gomorrah because they were the lands of sodomized people, the people of Lot, peace be upon him, Lut alayhi salam. And the second thing is to approach a woman, to fornicate with a woman that is married. That means to approach a woman that has a spouse. This is a disaster. And this is the most worst type of fornicating. Because now you're not only committing a crime, you are destroying the relationship between, you are betraying your brother. You are betraying your brother and helping her to betray her husband. And less than that, when you fornicate with a woman that is not married and that was never married, that's less than that. Although it is a major crime. And Yusuf alayhi salam, when the wife of the king or the Aziz of Egypt asked him to approach her, he says, إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That means the ones that transgress and betray and fornicate, they would never success. Okay. Third thing is when you approach a foreign woman, or she approaches a foreign man, but without fornicating, just kissing and hugging and doing all these acts. And the most worst case in this is when you do that with a woman that is married. And one of the worst things when you approach your wife's bottom, and that is similar to homosexuality. Although it doesn't have any punishments in Islam, specific punishments, I mean, approaching your wife from in her back, in her bottom, but it is forbidden. And some people claim that Imam Malik said there is nothing about that, but that is not true. Because when he was asked about that, he denied that, and he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Nisa'ukum harthul lakum, your wives are like a land that you plant in it things. And where can you plant and things would grow? It's in the vagina. It's not in the back, in the bottom. So that the verse is referring to that you are allowed to approach your wife from the back to the to from her back to her vagina, not to her bottom. And this is against nature and against normal things, and this is very bad actually. But anyway, fornicating is worse than that. The fourth thing is to discharge semen by masturbation acts. And the majority of scholars say that it's haram. And some of them who said that you are allowed to do that, they made some preconditions for that. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi rahimahullah said even if it was permissible, would a normal man or a normal human being like to do that to himself? It's something that is against nature as well. You feel that you are pleasure, you feel that you want sex, practice it with your wife. Why should you practice it with your hand? But Imam Ahmad said if you do it because you are afraid of fornicating, that is not haram. That is not haram. What it proves that it's haram is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, the ones that conserve their private parts except on their wives. That means you are allowed to do that with your wife, but with your hand, you're not allowed to do that. And you are not allowed to see. He says when you see in a dream that you are with somebody, with a woman that is not your wife, or that is a punishment. He says. But if you just have a wet dream and you don't know with whom that happened, it's a bounty from Allah for you. And if you see that with your wife, that is a very good thing for you. What helps you conserve your private parts is reciting Surah Al-Falaq, and keep on reciting Subhan al-Malik al-Quddus, and keep on reading or reciting Was-Sama'i wa-Tariq, the same thing as we said before, that I don't have any proof about this thing. Where did he get this from? Where did he get this from? There is no authentic evidence that proves this. There is no authentic evidence that proves this. You are not allowed to approach your penis or her vagina with your right hand. Actually, right hand, you're not allowed to use it unless it's for good things. Bad things or nasty things or dirty things, you use your left hand. You are asked to not approach your wife after discharging semen in a wet dream. But there is no evidence that proves that. What he says here is not. There is no evidence that proves that. He says he mentioned here things that are there is no evidence that proves it. He says when you just approach your wife without playing with her, kissing and hugging and stuff like that, the child would become a stupid guy. And things like that. And then he says you are asked to wait until your wife discharges her semen when you're approaching her, so both of you have pleasure. Says you have to wait for her and feel that she has her pleasure, and play with her. And he mentioned here, and play with her breast and stuff like that until she has her pleasure and you have your pleasure. And if you want to have a child, a male child, let her sleep on her edge, on her right edge. And if you want a female, let her sleep on her left edge. But there is no. And if you don't want any child, let her sleep on her stomach. I don't know. This is things that maybe they used it and it worked, but there isn't anything that proves that, nor not by science nor by religion actually. But he says, don't forget all of the reciting. Say Bismillah when you start, and say Allahumma jannibna shaytan wa jannib shaytan ma razaqtana. Oh Allah, make Satan far from us and make Satan far from any child that you provided us. When you finish, say Alhamdulillah alladhi khalaqa min al-ma'i bashara. Thanks for Allah that created from water human beings. And when your saliva get mixed with your wife's saliva, that makes you both love each other more. And it's like when you breathe in her face and she breathes in your face. He mentions other things here that I don't have any proof about that. He says you have to be very kind and good with your wife and pay payments on her, and that is something that is obligatory for you to pay her payments, and you have that is what you have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you reward for that. And don't intercourse her and when you are both wearing clothes. Just you have to be both naked, because that is the sunnah. And never give her things because she gives you herself. That because it's like prostitution. She says to you, well, if you want to approach me, give me so and so. That's like, it's similar to prostitution. This is what Ibn al-Hajj said in his book Al-Madkhal.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Don't keep on approaching her until she gets bored from these things, and at least twice in the week. And that is good for both of you. That was, he says. And never divorce your wife because you didn't like something from her. Because if you divorced her for something, don't say bad things about her. So either you leave her as a wife and you take care of her, or you divorce her and be good to her, and she has her life and you would have your life. And never follow her in something that is haram. And the same thing for the wife. Never follow your husband in things that are haram. And never prevent her from things that are permissible. That's and never be strict in things that are permissible. And always order your wife and your children and stuff, pray and do good things, and teach them things that have to do with the menstruation period and stuff like that. All of these things that have to know, you have to teach your wife, and both of them participate in lectures like these kinds of lectures, so that you help each other. Yes. Okay, and he says if you are afraid, or if you can't approach your wife because you feel that there's magic that happened, somebody did something bad to you, so write Surah Al-Fatiha 7 times, and Surah Inna Anzalnahu Fi Laylatul Qadr 25 times in a pat, and wash it with water. He mentioned these things. I don't know where did he get this from. And drink all of those things, and that would solve your problem by the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if he has more than one wife, he has to be fair with all of them. He has to be fair with all of his wives. Yes. After that, he entered a new chapter, which is branch 5, all things that have to do with your stomach, things that are forbidden for your stomach. Okay, we can't mention this now. I'll mention it next time, inshallah, in the next lecture. Thank you very much for being patient with me. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.